Dane and Derek is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. You can find content warnings in the episode description. Thank you for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our little corner of the internet. My name is Derek, and this is Dane and Derek, a show where we talk about art, Dungeons & Dragons, life, ma, and more. And with me, as always, is my incredible co-host and good friend, Dane.
Hey, I'm Dane. I'm a writer. I am a law clerk, and I'm a lover of music, tabletop RPGs. I'm a musician sometimes. I'm a podcaster sometimes. I like a lot of life, so I do a lot of things. It's nice.
Yeah.
How are you doing this
I'm
fine
doing
evening that we
good.
record?
Yeah. For those wondering, this is July 5th when we are recording this, and this episode will air after episode 100. So if we
Mm-hmm.
don't make any references to episode 100, it's because we haven't recorded episode 100.
Yeah, we have not.
Yeah.
We're in the past times.
Yes, we are in the past
Speaking
times.
to you in the future.
Yeah, it's been a weird few months as we talked about on episode 99.
Yep. Yeah, it
And
has
so,
been.
yeah, I
'Cause
guess, yeah, go ahead.
To give my update, I went from May, which was finals, into starting a new job, into June, which was just sort of adjusting to that job, trying to keep up with, relationships and like I'd kind of like in May, I'd kind of like lost track of like all my connections with people, and so like June was I was playing catch up, and my sister was leaving for summer intensives and graduating. Like so much was happening. So it's been a while for us. Updates though.
Yes.
This is funny when we do these. Like I forgot to dole it out this time. So the funny thing is, I am in this like weird position where I've been kind of like ignoring that I'm going to go back to school in about a month and a half. And so there's like normal school things to like start putting together, like, all right, go get your student loans to go pay your tuition and all that stuff. Right. Like, and,
Mhm.
I just straight up haven't done it yet. Um,
Oh, goodness.
so I scheduled a day, um, in the next couple of weeks to just sit down and like the only thing I have to do that day is get all that stuff done, which is a silly thing to have to do, but um it's a weird situation to be like I am working full-time hardcore. It's like a real goddamn job where like I've never experienced this before. I've never experienced a job in which I have felt truly mentally spent by the job. Um which is why I've taken to writing in the mornings before I go to work. Um
Dang, you're on that morning pages crew.
I am on that morning pages crew. And I'm sure we'll talk about that soon with the whole carving out time episodes that I'm sure are coming up. But the long and short of it is this job is just very different. So the idea of like after doing that, going home and doing a bunch of like bureaucratic work
Mhm.
to go back to school in the fall sounds like the fucking worst after reading and doing law all day. Um, like it's a very it's
Yeah.
new it's new, and there are things that I realized I had never done in my life. Like I've never worked in an office setting before with other people. When I worked at
Mhm.
Naropa, I almost exclusively worked alone. um
Mm.
and so like I'm still kind of learning how to concentrate while other people are talking and I can hear. um
Oh, yeah. That water
yeah,
cooler chat.
yeah. And like a lot of communication has to get done, especially between the paralegal and um, my boss, the attorney. And so they talk constantly about the cases. And so like I also kind of need to be listening to that to know what's going on in the cases. Um, and so it's new skills. It's super interesting. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I feel like, I guess something I am wondering, and maybe this is for another episode, but at the end of the summer, will you be leaving this job when you
I'll
go back
let
to
you know
school?
when I know.
Oh boy, oh, good
Because I,
stuff.
I potentially could stay on like quarter
Mm.
time maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, because there's parts of me that like definitely wants to stay on because cases move kind of slow, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, like slower than you'd think. It's a family law firm, so it's a lot of cases involving like children's rights, and also a bunch of cases involving divorces in Boulder.
Uh,
So they're rich people divorces.
uh-huh.
Um, and so it's this odd thing of like you need to get all this stuff right, and you know like divorce sounds very like small potatoes in some ways, and I guess it kind of is in some ways. The whole idea of like it's just a personal matter. But if you actually think about the ending of these sorts of situations, if you get them wrong, like if they get
Oh
done
yeah.
wrong, like people get trapped in abusive relationships forever, like,
Mhm.
and children don't go to the right places. Like, it's a small thing, but it's a weirdly important thing.
Yeah.
um
No, yeah.
you know and like I've already experienced this with the cases I've been with, wherein some people, they when they get married they stop working, and they or they're not particularly skilled with money or any number of things, and but their partner is. And when you're in a relationship and you're in a partnership, and in a healthy one, what you do is you balance out each other's skills. Like, you basically say, like, don't worry about learning that skill in life, I got that one, and
Mhm.
we're a team, so I'll do that. And you know you got these other skills that I don't have, right? Like, that's the best way of doing it, right? But there's another version of that in which it's a control thing, it's an abusive thing.
Mhm.
And so when that other person is done with the relationship and done being abused and wants out and all of these things, disentangling, they need help due to the
Yeah.
fact that there might very well be skills that they are missing, and that's kind of where their attorney comes in sometimes.
Yeah. No,
Ideally
yeah.
with like a therapist as well.
Yes, yeah. A
um,
lot of care
just,
resources, yeah.
yeah, just a little bit of general advice, and this is not legal advice. So I'm not even ethically like dubious here. Is for everybody out there listening, please do not confuse your therapist with your lawyer. One of those things is distinctly more expensive than the other and will not help you feel better. It will only help you with your legal and legal matters.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly won't help you financially if you do that. So yeah, so it's a very interesting situation, um, in which like it really does matter, and this is a situation in which people really do need help, and it's very personal, um and there's already so much stigma attached to it,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and that sucks. And and I don't know if this will end up being my area of practice in the future or not, or whatever, but I'll be honest, my heart goes out to our clients, and often the other parties, because not every case is one where people are in horrible relationships with monsters. That's just not how it is. People fall out of
Mhm.
love, and it's pain. Like, it's pain. And interestingly, it is my own personal complex feelings with the institution of marriage and divorce that has led me to even explore this, in the sense of like, we we add the law into our personal relationships here, right? That's what marriage is. Like, I'm sorry. Like, for lots of people, there's a religious aspect to it, and for lots of people, there's a huge emotional aspect to marriage. And I'm not talking about that, because those
Mhm.
things are different, right? Like, the commitment you
Yeah.
make as a person to another person out of love, that's between you and them, right?
Mm-hmm.
The commitment you make before God, if that's what you believe in and what you feel, that's between you and God, right?
Yeah.
But there is a literal legal thing called marriage, which is also a thing humans made up, don't get me wrong, but it is a distinctly more real thing, more tangible than the other things.
Mm-hmm.
It dictates how you are going to move through the world. And so there's this awful thing that I see, which is, like you've been through a breakup. They fucking
Mm-hmm.
suck.
Yeah.
But what if you had to be stuck in a process of breaking up with them for up to 2 years?
No, yeah.
Longer? Because
Yeah.
you have to like go through this whole process?
Mm-hmm.
It sucks. And so my heart goes out to these people because there's so much pain involved because our system is set up with this. There's almost like this sort of rebellious aspect to it for me of like, well, let's just disrupt all of this and disentangle this and fuck this. Like, fucking sucks that you got all tied up with this shit. Let's get you undone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, it's it's a very interesting thing. But long and short of it, I also will say that I've been asked, how do you handle it? How do you handle people coming to you with they're always upset and it's sad and they're pissed and not in their best place because of this area of law? And my answer to that is actually, you tell me the moment in which someone goes looking for a lawyer when they're having a good day.
Mm.
Like there are some situations, like sometimes you work for a business and like in-house attorney, and then you're just kind of like dealing with day-to-day stuff or some other things like that. And that's kind of like I equate it to being like a family practice doctor, a pediatrician. By and large, everything's fine. Like people come to you with their questions, you give them a little bit of, you're like, oh, you broke your arm and you're 12 you broke your arm because you're a kid, and we're gonna patch you up and it's gonna be fine, no big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, nobody goes to see a cardiologist because everything's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes to see a criminal attorney because everything's fine.
Right.
There's no version of this that doesn't have that. Not really. And then there's also the tragic day, even if you're in one of those like small, those areas where it's nicer, where something is going to blow up, right? Like,
Yeah.
for example, like just to take it back to medicine, for example, it was my pediatrician who found my cancer. Like, not initially, but he was the one who then did the next tests for me. And then he sent me off. What an awful day that must have been for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, yeah. Anyways, sorry. This is supposed to be an episode about experience points in D&D. You asked a very poignant question and then I went off on it. Do you have film updates? I'm sorry. I don't even I looked away from.
No, you're all good. You're
It's
all
been
good.
13 minutes of this.
I was curious about it because I feel like, like when you're during the summertime, like whether or not you're going to stay on at a job or not it's a pretty important question. And in a way, it does kind of tie into today's topic, which is experience point systems, and having an entry level job like that and working your way up
What
kind
a
of is like,
transition, folks. This is why
yeah.
he gets paid the big bucks.
Like I think like that's the, it was pertinent to that to a degree, but to answer your question, I don't have any film updates. I think I kind of spent them all on the episode we recorded earlier, and probably by the time you all are listening to this, I'm probably still kind of going to be in the thick of working on things and trying to find that balance. So I think
Mm-hmm.
we can just kind of go ahead right into it. I think, man, we should definitely talk more about the law stuff like at a separate time because I have questions, but for off mic.
To be
Um,
clear, I can give you no legal advice. That is not ethical. I am not a
oh
practicing.
no,
Okay,
yeah,
just
no, yeah.
yeah.
I'm not asking for legal advice.
No. I've started being asked for legal advice from like friends,
Hmm.
um, and I'm like, I cannot tell you anything. What I will tell you is you should go talk to a lawyer. Um, um,
Yeah. No, yeah. I think I'm just curious because the more that you talk about law, the more I realize just how it is like math and it is like math and philosophy, but with like rules. And I guess that is just what rules are, but it is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um,
So here's something I often think about. So we have philosophy and morality, right? Like that's a
mhm,
thing that we've created. Politics is in many ways societies arguing out how those morals are going to be put enacted and which ones are more important than others.
mhm,
Um, the laws are then how those decisions are then enacted and encoded and given
mhm,
force, right?
mhm.
Um, and so it's I find it interesting due to the fact that like the law, it's a game of telephone, right? Um, like there's the like let's take like LGBT rights for example. Like the moral is everybody should be treated equally in the LGBT community and they should be protected, right? That's a
Mhm.
moral we might want and I want to be enacted. I desperately want that one to be more enacted. It's not right now and it's frustrating. Moving on. Um and then there's the politics of it where everybody argues about it and then someone passes something about it and then we get a law and it's about how do we get that enforced, right? Like
Mhm.
and so it's messy. We'll definitely talk about that too. But there's a whole game of telephone to it and the fact that we keep laws for a really long time, like we're living with the telephone enacted morals of people from the 1800s still, right? Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
weird. It's fucking weird.
Mhm.
Anyhow,
Anyhow,
XP.
XP,
um
experience points for those not in the know,
yes.
which can be accrued in real life by working an internship and then getting a job from that internship and then working your way up the ladder, which,
Mm-hmm.
that model doesn't necessarily work at most places these days, but that is the model that I'm using to compare it to. The
uh,
other,
Another model might be practicing
yes.
a musical instrument over and over and
Yeah.
over again,
And getting progressively better to a point where you can play that instrument without needing to read sheet music, or playing a sport so well that eventually, yeah, you hit the baseball a home run every 10
Every,
every 10 times to bat you hit a home run, which would be
right.
insane. um
Yeah, no, but like that's
yeah,
the idea, right?
experience points, yeah.
So experience points are a numeric abstraction of the concept of gaining experience and growth.
Yes.
So I don't really know the full history of the experience point. Um, but experience points, I believe, at least date back to first edition, if not maybe chainmail.
Yes, that is correct.
And originally they came not really in you got experience points when you spent gold or acquired treasure and gold in older
Yeah.
games, and later it was attached to killing monsters.
Hmm.
um and now XP systems are just like fucking ubiquitous, right? Like they're in
Yeah.
video games, they're in basically every version of tabletop RPGs. Like like I would argue that there are like in gamified like ranking systems in like Headspace, like the meditation app, or
Yes.
Wordle or whatnot. Like these things, it's kind of everywhere, right?
Yeah,
um
everything's got an achievement thing, everything's got
exactly, yeah.
a meter, whether or not you gain experience points by killing monsters, making decisions, selling things, or doing or failing at something. Even you
Right,
still
yeah.
gain experience numerically through some sort of like quantified thing.
Yeah. So there's lots of different like it, the idea is to have a progression system and allow players to get stronger, and it's very fun in that way. The thing that's interesting about XP systems to me is that they encourage different styles of play, right? So if you tie XP exclusively to killing monsters, what you're saying is to players, if you want to get better, which I know you do, because you like your numbers going up, it feels good, you want to do fun stuff, you got to go kill monsters.
Hmm.
That's it. If you say every gold piece is an experience point, you are encouraging kleptomania, right? Like if in Dungeon World, what that you're encouraging is people to fail a bit, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
You.
to make connections and evolve relationships in their XP or discover. Like I think Dungeon Worlds is a pretty robust one in which it does treasure, fighting stuff, discovering things, um, and failing and having social interactions with your fellow players, which I think is very robust. 5e, on the other hand, I find limited. Though
Mhm.
5e also does away with experience points and instead ties it purely to narrative. That's like your milestone
Mhm.
style leveling. Um, and like other game systems do different things, right? Like Diablo, for example, it's basically all through fucking killing things and doing quests. Like that's it. Um,
Yeah.
and and like Dragon Age Inquisition at least has a various number of ways, including reading books and things.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say is that there are some limitations to XP systems, right?
Mhm.
Because I think there needs to be a couple of things built in, which is your players need to understand it and they
Yeah.
need to know how to achieve it, right? So with
Right.
like the killing monsters way, you kill a dragon, you're going to get more XP than killing a kobold.
Right.
You know, these things are the harder thing gives you more experience, right? The greater the challenge, right? The
Mhm.
more gold you've managed to bring back through wits and guile and strength of arms, the more XP you're going to get. It's the same idea in my head, right?
Yeah.
Um the reason I think those two systems in particular work so well, relatively speaking, is that they're very clear to the players without you having to say X monster is worth X thing that you do is worth 500 and breaking immersion. Um,
Mhm.
and they can be applied very quickly to at the end of a fight being like everybody gets 50 XP, right? Or if in the case of the gold, you give them the gold, they know how many XP they can get by spending it or whatever, right? That's all very clear.
Mhm.
Um, and if you want to level up mid game, because sometimes that's exciting, that's an option. Dungeon World, on the other hand, has this slower pace, right? Most of it, like either you failed and you get one, or you have to wait until the end of the session to get most of your XP.
Mhm.
And I think that's pretty good. But what that speaks to is in video games, you can attach XP to a lot of stuff because the games can have shit working in the background.
Yeah.
The computer can run it, but like I as the dungeon master can't sit here and be like, you read a scroll, get 50 XP. Like I can't stop all the time to do that. Right? Like in Dragon Age, you can
Yeah.
read a scroll and then you pop it down and then you're running away and you see a little 50 XP thing pop up near somewhere on the
Yeah.
screen, right? And that's like,
Mhm.
great, cool, processed, you got it. Um Now, interestingly, I am bringing this up and making it a topic of the episode due to the fact that I am having a conundrum,
Oh.
um, which is the following. I really love the campaign I'm doing right now. I don't actually foresee it ending anytime particularly soon. I think there's a good 4 to 5 months left in it. However, um, there are some things I want to do for the next one, including doing some fun map stuff that requires me to do some sort of like pre-planning things. And because of that, I'm starting to think about what I really liked from this campaign and things I have liked less. One thing I have liked less is XP being exclusively tied to monsters. There have been
Mhm.
sessions where really great play has come around stealth checks. Recently, by the by, I had a stealth D&D game, like 5e D&D game, work. Like,
Dang.
it was amazing. Like, I was like, oh my God, they just stealth their way through this. This is amazing. It was a party of a ranger and two rogues. So
Hmm.
they cast Pass Without Trace and were rolling like plus 20 everybody for their stealth. It was bonkers.
That's great.
Um Anyhow,
Huh.
setting all of that aside, um, when you incentivize treasure, you kind of incentivize people being selfish and trying to get a hold of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you incentivize just pure fighting, everybody's always looking for a fight. There's nobody wants to skip a fight. Like people don't really want to ignore monster or just try and sneak around it or anything because that feels like a bucket of XP they've missed. And I'm against like the problem is I can't stop for every failed roll in D&D. That works for Dungeon World because you roll significantly less often.
Right.
Um and so my question is, have you ever run across any XP systems that are more inclusive of things? And if you haven't, do you think that there are other ones out there?
Hmm. Well, in terms of XP systems, my first thought immediately jumps to like Burning Wheel.
Ooh, interesting.
Um,
I have not dived into Burning Wheel very much.
I have
What's
not
the
dived. I have not dived into Burning Wheel because it just feels intimidating. But
It's
basically,
so
like,
intimidating.
experience is rewarded through the doing of things. So if you want to be a better sword fighter, fight with swords. If you want to be a really good wizard, cast some spells. If you want to be really good at fishing, fish. It's kind of
Mhm.
like the RuneScape approach. Um, and so, like, by doing the skill or by doing the thing more, you are rewarded. That's like a very rudimentary. That's a very rudimentary understanding of it from what I have of it.
Mhm.
I think there's definitely a a world in which you know it there's probably more to it than that. But like
Yeah.
I think like from my own experience game mastering, because like yeah, if you can't do the dungeon world thing, and if you can't do the burning wheel thing, and if you can't do D&D with it just being like monsters and like an XP rewarded for quests, then like you almost like I think about how like if you're doing something with maps, I guess like my first thought is like, okay, this sounds like a game that's about exploration, right?
Not really. I just want to make a really cool one. It's more the thing. Um,
So then, so then my brain then goes to, which is I think is something we have talked about on the show, which is Breath of the Wild
mhm.
as like a leveling system. Like you level through solving puzzles. You don't get any experience from killing monsters. You only get
No.
materials. And so,
Unless the shrine in particular is one of the combat ones, which is not all of
correct.
them. And
Yeah,
it's the
not all of them.
minority by a long shot for sure.
Yeah. And so I think like perhaps that's a route where you basically like let your players know like, hey, if you want to like level up or get closer to leveling up, like you can go to like this place where you can attempt a trial and attempt to level up. Like leveling up and gaining experience becomes more of a choice
Mhm.
in game where like the players decide they're going to go to the thing to try and level up. And whether that's a combat thing or a puzzle thing, or a social encounter or whatever, it becomes more like scenified in a way, kind of like Dungeon World.
Yeah, so
Um,
like you could have trials instead of experience points
yeah.
for levels,
Hmm.
which would be interesting, except for the fact that I think that would okay. So like if you were to like let's say for a fighter, your trial is to defeat something in one-on-one combat. Let's say,
Hmm.
right? If that trial happens, it needs to be more difficult than what the average character could at that level current level could handle,
Correct. It
right?
needs to be as difficult as the level that you are trying to get to.
Sure. So then my question then becomes, well, wouldn't that you just they would have to try it until the dice were with them, or would they, or what would you suggest there? Like
So
allow
I
them a
th-
clever solution? I'm curious.
so I think that's where it gets tricky
Mm-hmm.
because then you're opening up the room for it to become like a roguelike or like a game where people are just going to try and game the system, right? Like
Yeah.
like like what the equivalent of like a halfling stealthing and backstabbing over and over and over again until the thing's dead. Like, and that kind of like takes some of the fun and creativity out of the game by just making it all math.
Yep.
Um, so I think you do run into that conundrum. I think you also then have to consider like, okay, well then like if they can't beat it by normal means, then they must be able to beat it by materials and other things they've acquired means, which means
Right.
that they will need to be thinking outside the box in terms of things they've acquired or things that they've like gained on adventures. And so I guess there's a part of me that almost
Hmm.
wonders maybe instead of maybe experience, because like I don't know, I don't usually attach experience points to monsters when I play D&D.
Hmm.
I hardly ever use what they suggest in the book. um
Yeah, yeah. I'm using it more due to the fact that I don't have a regular roster. My roster
ah
rotates really regularly, and so I'm in this situation in which I need it to be very fair, and I can't tie it to character growth because it may not happen, and characters die pretty frequently. Um,
Interesting. Are you
and
still kind
they,
of doing your where the moons dance kind of system but
I am
expanding on it?
indeed, I am
Okay.
indeed, and so what I'm definitely looking for is more options for leveling,
Mm.
to give them more choices.
Oh, take the Hades approach.
The Hades approach.
Yeah, so you know how like Hades has like like you're fighting your way out, and by like killing things, spending more money, and acquiring materials, you gain experience points, right? Like,
The darkness.
yeah, yeah. But then also like you can also at a certain point, right? You can go through like the God of Chaoses or just Chaoses like portals, or you can go into like the other hidden rooms that like
Hmm.
are just like boss rushes basically,
Yeah.
that basically like resource pump you. Um, maybe there's a world in which like you can tie experience points um to like a resource that then players can spend. It's not money, but it is a resource that they can spend. And like even if their character dies, they can still
Mm,
keep it.
maybe.
Um
Maybe.
or it's like in the idea of like um like there's other like there's two or three versions of every trial, right? There's like an
Hmm.
easy combat encounter that gets you to the next level, but there's also like a higher one that can jump you a few levels. And
Hmm.
so
See, that'd be very exciting. That'd be very exciting for sure.
yeah, because I think like if you give the players the option of like, yeah, you can keep going the safe way with your trial, or you could gamble and like like maybe it's like maybe each encounter is worth a certain amount of levels.
Hmm.
And before going into the like trial, the party needs to agree on how they're dividing up the levels gained.
Hmm.
And so it becomes a player decision to divide up the experience.
Sure. Yeah. That's interesting.
So like
Asymmetric
yeah,
experience gain.
that's something that I feel like in second edition was much more prevalent because like
Hmm.
like everyone needed at first level, not everyone needed 300 experience points, right? Like fighters needed 2,000 experience points and rogues needed like 1,200. A wizard needed like 3,000, right?
Yeah.
And so like wizards would level slower, but they'd be significantly more powerful each time. Fighters would level a medium amount and would kind of stay the same the whole time. Rogues would level faster and cap out faster, but also like be able to do much more that could benefit the party. And so maybe like there's a world in which you can kind of structure it in the sense of like, yeah, like the encounters are worth different levels of experience and you can divide that amongst yourselves.
Hmm.
That way, like, like say like, like you have a roster wherein like there's like 3 4 level characters and one like first level character. And everyone's in a particularly good mood that day. And they're like, hey, let's go to this six level encounter and let's each the three of us will each get one experience point or like one level or maybe one person forgoes a level but the other person can
Hmm.
get the rest. And
Yeah.
so like everyone's now supporting each other kind of.
There
um
is there is already some of that where, like if a character dies, I don't let them come back at the same level. Everybody always starts at one. And so if
mhm.
they come back with their first level character, the other higher level characters often will carry them through a few encounters, and then they'll power level. They will do that thing. Like typically, if you've died, you will come back at first level. If you um if you if you make it through your first session with them, they're probably going to be at 3 by the end of it, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there is definitely some of that. Um, my only concern is that's just a little. That's maybe a step more gamified than I'd like.
Yeah.
Because I think the interesting thing about Breath of the Wild, for example, which I think has a really great advancement system that is kind of XP. It's basically four puzzles for a heart or a piece of stamina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the rest of your advancement actually comes through advancing the story, right? That's how you get your Mifa's grace and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's through getting a hold of the Master Sword and acquiring better armor, things that are permanent. Um, you know, and so like there's this part of me that's like, okay, I really love the naturalistic way of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I wonder if that there is a I wonder if there is a way to attach leveling to your character class. Like, okay, here's a
Oh,
pitch.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like here's a pitch. Like, maybe if you're a fighter or like a barbarian, or maybe it could be attached to like just like types of like groupings of classes or something. Like, you get X number of XP for every enemy you down. Like you personally get that last hit on or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas like if you're the rogue, you get a smaller piece of XP every time you succeed on a skill check. Um, for example.
So yeah, no, I think that's actually a great idea because I was gonna say like maybe you could come up with like kind of like how like Powered by the Apocalypse games have those like bonds.
Yeah.
But what if you made those bonds like these are your experience rules and everyone gets like 2 experience rules? So like
Mm-hmm.
and those are
Mm-hmm.
like by doing this I gain like my character does this, therefore I gain this when I do it. Like I'm a fighter, therefore when I fight people and I defeat them successfully in combat, I gain X amount of experience points. But
Mm-hmm.
then my character is also this. Like my character is a fighter who fights, but he's also like a he's also into politics, let's say. So every time you make a persuasion skill check, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you get like maybe you need to set it like there's one action and there's one skill that experience is associated with or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe one that's attached to the class really strong and one that's a little bit looser, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So maybe
Um,
it's like a you have like your character personality action or like
mhm,
you have the in-game mechanical action, the in-game mechanical skill, the character class experience trait, and
mhm.
then the like sort of player like player I guess like personality or background trait or something
Yeah,
attached to it. Yeah.
yeah, like
Like call them experience traits.
yeah, like like okay, for example, like you could tie it to like your background and your class, right?
Mhm.
Like what if like the 2 skills you get from your background, whenever you succeed on those checks, you get X number of XP.
Yeah.
And that would be the ones that you would attach to yourself, right?
Mhm.
And then for like rogue, it's whatever it's your background one, and whenever you use the skills you get expertise in, those.
Yeah.
Um, and like maybe with fighter, like I think it should be attached to a first level ability.
Right. It should be like whenever you use your like it should be whenever you use like
Your
your
fighting
fighting
style
style.
if you're a fighter, or whenever
Yeah.
you action surge or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Um,
I think that's smart because then it encourages people to use these abilities.
mhm,
And
that are
and the
go
nice
ahead.
part always and the nice part too, right, is like it will stagger the leveling scale,
Hmm.
but that's not a bad thing
No.
because I think it'll force your players to be more proactive in game. to sort
Yes.
of catch up. And it won't be sort of out of like a gamifyingness, it'll be out of a fulfilling the roles.
Yeah, and I think I would want each one to have some choice into it. Like I think I would
Hmm.
rather for like fighter, for example, um I think I would want it to be like tied to that fighting style so that it's not every fighter is constantly trying to look for people to kill, but it's like, well, my fighter is an archer, so I pick the archery fighting style. So whenever I use my archery fighting style, I get some XP,
Hmm.
um, to like lean into their choices,
Yes.
more than anything else.
And then the best part too is like maybe every 4 levels or something, or every 3 levels, you could have it so you can swap out a trait or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
That way, like it's not that way they're not locked into it.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you pick something you think would is going to be really helpful and then it just doesn't come up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having the option to change it,
Yeah.
um, or maybe even every level. I don't know. But I think there's merit to that because then like the leveling will go a lot slower and people it'll reinforce people's decisions, like you said,
Hmm.
and it's a little bit of experience every now and then that you don't have to keep track of.
No, especially if I tell them like right away, like this is how it goes. Please keep track of it yourself.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and it would also scale, right? So like let's say it's you picked the archery and you're the fighter, right? Like that's you. Um, then what's been in, if you have to hit with your archery ability to get that XP, well, if at level 2, you're fighting goblins and stuff and that's so hard, but by level 5 you're fighting completely different monsters and the AC has gone with it, right?
Hmm.
The difficulty has also increased, so it's not like it's suddenly like just getting XP out the ass, right?
Right.
And also I think I would lock it, like you don't get more XP the higher you are. Like it's not like at 5th level you get 15 every time, but at first level you got 5. You
Right.
get 10 every time, so those first couple levels will come quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. See, this is
Hmm.
why I wanted to do this. This is a cool idea, honestly.
Yeah. And what's nice is like it rewards in character role playing, which I think is something so difficult to reward without being completely biased as a game master.
Mhm.
Like if your game is all about not killing people and your party wants to kill people, no one's going to level up, and that's like a bias as a game master, right? So
Right.
it's like this is in it's a mechanical way that does not change, that rewards players probably to a satisfactory degree.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's fun.
I think that's really fun. I also think you could gear your play style. So before, like, I know we got to wrap up, but I'm having a good time with this conversation, and I
No,
stole a
yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
time with law stuff at the beginning. So
yeah.
here's my question.
Hmm.
So I kind of have a good idea around fighting characters and skill, like heavily skill based characters, right?
Hmm.
Two questions, I guess. The first one is should do you think it should be more generalized, right? Like any class that gets a fighting style, should that be the thing? Or does it need to be tied to a first level ability of the class?
I think I think you should tie it to a first level ability of the class,
Okay.
but I think you could make it more general in the sense of like here's a bunch of things that could apply for spellcasters and that could apply for all the spellcasting classes. And
I was thinking for spellcasting classes, tying it like being like pick some signature spells. Do you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Or like yeah, or like a specialty, kind of like
Y-
like a spellcasting style.
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I was kind of thinking like you could reward ritualists, like people who use a lot of rituals.
Hmm.
Because I don't want it to be like only rewarding combat spells.
Right. Well, basically for every school of magic, right? Like
Hmm.
whenever someone picks their school of magic, if they're a wizard,
Yeah.
or like each type of spell, has like a sort of like um
I think signature spells is the way to go.
yeah.
And make sure that they can't be cantrips though.
Yeah. They have to be first level spells.
I think
I think
so.
yeah, you have to ban cantrip spells. People would just power level. Um if
Maybe, but at the same time, or maybe it should be one cantrip.
maybe I think I would personally put more stock into like preparing.
Mm,
Like if a character uses like the ability to prepare spells and they call it out in game and they actually like role play it out in game, like I think that's a more fun way of giving experience, like the memorizing spells before bed or the praying for spells before bed.
yeah.
I like that a lot better thematically,
Hmm.
because then it's like depending on what spells you prepare or just the act of preparing spells. But then of course like that changes if you're like a sorcerer or something. But I think there's
Right.
still other things you can. I think basically like you just got to go through the player's guide and just like pick the coolest things that you think wouldn't break the game and see what you can attach. Because like for like
Like for Bard, for example, like for Bard, like the one I definitely want to do would be like whenever someone succeeds using your bardic inspiration would be like something
mm,
awesome, maybe.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but that locks them into a single place. That's the one thing I don't want is I don't want to lock any class fully into one single play style.
hmm,
So for spellcasters, I think doing signature spells of some kind, be that through the preparing of signature spells or the casting of them in the first place, I don't know, is the way to go with that because it means um like the wizard who picks fireball counterspell and you know uh magic missile is very different than the wizard who picks magic circle, identify, and
wizard
augury,
lock,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, as their signature spells.
mm-hmm.
um Although that's interesting with like sorcerers and things because they have so many fewer spells.
Yeah. I think for them it would probably have to be something like. This is really testing my knowledge of how well I know sorcerers and warlocks and monks. Um, I think I think there's room to kind of figure it out, like because I think like if you have a skill based thing and you have a class based thing, at least two and two, right? That's
Yeah, because with the class base, with the background based thing, the skills, everybody's going to have the same ones there, right? Like
yeah,
that's a
exactly.
constant source for
That's
everybody
yeah,
with
that's
all kinds
easy.
of customization, right?
Yeah, I think something too, is like maybe like I mean like signature spells, like maybe like a signature weapon type or something.
Hmm.
Or like I know Dungeon World has like for fighters they have a signature weapon
Yeah.
ability. Maybe that's like a way to go about it that can kind of circumvent like that. Or you could even attach experience to an alignment. Like
Oh yeah, that's the other thing that Dungeon World does that I forgot about.
yeah,
Yeah.
like you could do that, or instead of an alignment, you could have like a moral thing that like the players decide.
I think that's tricky because again, I want to take
Oh
I
yeah.
think I want to take the GM's judgment out of it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I really want to do.
Hmm.
Right? Like the great thing about the gold and the monsters is the monster's dead. This is the experience it had. It's divided evenly. And, like I'm not playing favorites. I'm not favoring anything over anything else outside of already favoring that this is where the XP lives, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I think.
okay, here's a question. I think
Yeah.
the one thing I could add though, is like they have this constant method, and then I could dole out XP things from time to time. Like I
Oh,
know
like
I literally just said like don't attach it to anything, but this is like the equivalent of like quest XP.
oh yeah. Definitely still have quest XP.
Yeah.
Like I think you should have like quest XP and like things where there's a measured success, where it's like you can literally say like, well, you saved the princess, but you didn't save the tower, and the tower was the thing that they were asking to be saved, so you only get half as much experience points. So like I think
Right.
like
I,
that's a more measurable thing. I think.
I think I could, because I think I could be very fair about saying something. Like
Hmm.
recently in the game I'm currently running, I brought up a thing that's on an island called the Brood Mother. I
Hmm.
could say in a different game, I could be like, listen, defeating the Brood Mother will grant an XP reward, and whoever's
Yeah.
present for that gets XP. That could be a rule too.
Hmm.
Lots to consider here. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I think
So
we cracked, and probably aren't the first people ever to crack this, but I think we've come up with another XP system that feels very fair and keeps
yeah.
the GM out of it, but rewards varying styles of play.
Yeah, well, so yeah, exactly. And back to sorcerers real quick. I just cracked open my player's guide. You could attach one of their abilities to like their sorceress origin.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and like same with like bards for their schools and warlocks for their pacts. Like I think there's like there's a route, there's something in there that I think you can explore.
yeah.
Um, but overall, yeah, I think we did. I think we did come up with a new way to level people in D and D, and I'm actually kind of curious to see like what you'll write up because I mean that could be a lot of fun to play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially, I could see this being very fun as a player, because then you
Yes.
are the person driving your XP
Hmm.
gain and not the GM necessarily.
Right. There is no more favoritism. There is only
No.
how much you want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Or
also, like, I think it favors, I think it'll still do the interesting thing that I find sometimes, which is like, in Dungeon World, the fighter is drawn to, getting into fights and defeating that monster to get that XP, whereas other players will be like, okay, yeah, but we need to like search out some sort of treasure, and I'm the wizard, so I'm way better at doing that than you. Um,
hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, wow, awesome, kick ass.
Yeah. Let's talk
This
about
was
this more.
Yeah, this was fun. Well, I'll have to give you an update after I've done some like looking at it, and eventually when I hopefully put this into play, because this feels good.
Yeah. It feels easy too. It doesn't feel like it's too much of an ask for the players.
It doesn't feel like it's too much of an ask for me either. Like
Yeah,
if
exactly. Yeah. I may
yeah,
want to steal it.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna write this up. This is fascinating. Yeah.
Well, good stuff.
Yeah, this was a long episode. It's almost a
I
it's a
know.
two it's almost a twofer. There was like a mini episode in the beginning.
I know, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's so funny. But hey, it's been like we've talked about, it's been a weird month and a half month.
it has
Like
been. You and I
cuz
need
we
to
haven't
catch
recorded in
up,
a
and
while.
yeah. Oh, and by the by, everybody, welcome to the second century of episodes. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, oh my goodness. I'm so curious what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um
So funny.
but yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everyone. If we see you selling this on RPG drive through whatever .net or whatever it's called,
Kick
uh,
ass.
kick ass. You stole our idea, but otherwise it's okay. We're not here in it for the money. We're here just to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, you can follow the show at Dane and Derek everywhere, and you can see what I'm doing on my new website, benigfilms.com.
And you can see links to basically all my things. I need to give it a little bit of an update here or there. Over at danewrites.com. There's links out to my writing. It's a little outdated right now, but there's still some good stuff that I really like out there. There's links out to Diceology, which at this point has finally stopped airing.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's all of 11 jump gates. All of the Saren episodes. There's Fall of
All
Magic.
magic.
There's our Six Word for Love miniseries, our Anna Landon miniseries. There's our Oh geez. Oh god. The name is escaping me right now, but our other second Dungeon World campaign that I really enjoyed, it's like a 4-part kind of epic covering seasons. And all of that now exists on one feed. I'm super proud of it.
I mean,
There's
it's like almost a decade of your life.
not it's
It's like
it's
5 years of
5
your
years. It's
life.
about 5 years.
Yeah.
Um
Okay, I was wrong. It's half a
no.
decade.
Yeah, it's half a decade because
Some reason
I started that show
okay.
when I started level 1 when I was 22. And
So
it
right after
finished when
college.
I'm 27. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's 5 years of work. I'm super proud of it. Um and I hope you don't mind if I just take a minute
Go
to,
for it.
thank Sam and Will and Taylor, Natalie, and everybody else who worked on the show. You guys rock. Um,
Yeah. It's a good show. I've been slowly working through Saren again.
I have a
Um,
big soft spot for Saren. I don't.
yeah.
It's hard to rank your children in a way. Your, but Saren is maybe the one that I'm most touched by when I listen back to it.
Mhm.
But I think the best series is 11 Jump Gates in terms of like cohesive narrative.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It's honestly all good, but I definitely it's been fun now getting to like re-listen to it years later since
Hmm.
when it came out. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
good stuff. Okay,
Anyhow,
have a good rest of your Wednesday wherever you are, folks.
hell yeah. Hell yeah.
um,
Or whatever day you're listening to it,
yeah, whatever day. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bye bye.
Catch you later.
Out here on the sand, not far from land. Sure, I'm warm, but I wish I was cold with you. Out here on the sand, not far from land. Sure, I'm warm, but I wish I was cold.